This is my first time ever seeing this young lady with these many clothes on.
4 of your daughter-in-law's children because your son married, and I'll use your words, a loose woman, multiple lovers, including an old man whom she used for money. Ex-husband is a mama's boy who won't stand up to his meddling mother.
But I never seen this young lady with these many clothes
But
on
I'm
in my whole
young. I'm
life.
not old like her.
But you got kids, you got a daughter, you got to raise.
Is this an outfit that you would wear, say, if you were going out with Mr. Mason on a date?
Wear it to the club.
Now, I never wore it to the club, but I will wear it to the club.
You will?
Yes.
It's been nothing but drama, promiscuity, and looseness all around between.
When the truth enters the courtroom, hearts break, relationships shatter, and lives change forever. Because a DNA test never lies, but people often do. This story unfolds in a courtroom where emotions are not just spoken, but felt. Under the firm yet compassionate guidance of Judge Lauren Lake, individuals find themselves confronting the truth they have been avoiding for years. This is not merely a legal process. It is a profound exploration of fear, hope, betrayal, love, and the constant struggle between the concept of justice in jurisprudence and the emotional reality of human life. At the center of this narrative are the intertwined themes of family bonds, betrayal, identity, and accountability. The courtroom itself is not just a physical space. It becomes a symbolic evidence stage in divorce case disputes, custody battles, and emotionally charged confrontations that test the boundaries of loyalty and truth. Many people come into this courtroom thinking the DNA test will provide closure. But as the stories unfold, we begin to see that people regret taking these tests not because the science is wrong, but because truth changes everything: relationships, family structures, personal identity, and self-worth. The revelation of biological reality can fracture the very idea of home. This script examines how the relationship between law and justice is not always simple. There are times when legal outcomes conflict with emotional expectations. Some individuals seek justice, others seek validation, others seek revenge, and some are simply trying to understand who they truly are. Judge Lauren Lake stands at the intersection of these motivations, offering measured reasoning, emotional awareness, and moral clarity. Throughout the story, we hear echoes of real voices, the type of reflections shared in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, emotional confessions heard on the Divorce Course podcast, legal explanations similar to the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, and thoughtful discussions similar to Truth Changes Everything podcast conversations. The narrative does not focus on dramatized scenes or external actions, but rather on internal transformations and emotional realizations. The heart of this story lies in the painful honesty that a DNA test brings forward. It does not care about memories, promises, or declarations. It deals only in biological truth. When that truth contradicts love, commitment, or family narratives, the emotional devastation is real. Through honesty, some families are restored. Through honesty, others fall apart. One of the most compelling elements present is how adverse inference in Evidence Act principles come into play. Silence, hesitation, avoidance, and emotional reactions become clues to deeper truths. Judge Lauren Lake demonstrates how even when people refuse to answer, the court can still interpret meaning. The law may rely on documents, testimonies, and laboratory confirmations, but truth often reveals itself in subtle ways. We also encounter stories of adoption, where biological ties do not define parenthood. These adoption stories' full episodes teach us that being a parent is more than sharing DNA. It is about presence, sacrifice, emotional support, and unconditional love. In some cases, adopted parents or step-parents prove to be more nurturing and reliable than biological parents ever were. The script contrasts these realities to explore the complexity of parental identity. However, the opposite situation also arises, where a parent wants to claim a child out of love, but is shaken when DNA disproves the connection. These moments expose deep emotional fractures. People who believed love alone created family confront the painful reminder that biology shapes identity at a fundamental level. The topic of child support also becomes central. DNA results become the legal basis through which responsibility is enforced. The Supreme Court child support principles referenced in this narrative highlight how society prioritizes the well-being of children by ensuring financial responsibility is not optional. Even when emotional bonds are absent or broken, the obligation remains. In several parts of this story, the issue of cheating arises, and with it, the emotional pain of betrayal. These are not sensationalized DNA test cheating stories designed for entertainment. Instead, they are human experiences filled with regret, guilt, anger, and longing. Each person involved carries emotional scars, whether they caused harm or endured it. The narrative also reflects on the consequences of impulsive decisions made during emotional confusion. Some individuals acted out of loneliness, others out of revenge, others out of survival. But the common thread remains. Truth eventually reveals itself, sometimes through testing, sometimes through confession, sometimes through the undeniable resemblance of a child. What stands out throughout the script is the emotional intelligence and moral steadiness of Judge Lauren Lake. She does not merely enforce legal rules. She confronts human complexity. She reminds each participant that justice must be rooted in accountability, responsibility, and empathy. Her courtroom becomes a space where the truth is not simply exposed, it is processed. With each revelation, she guides individuals through the emotional consequences. She emphasizes that parenting is not just about biological ties, but also about love, consistency, and emotional presence. At the same time, she reinforces that truth matters and healing cannot occur while living in denial. This is also a story about identity. Children deserve to know who they are. Adults deserve to understand their roles. Relationships deserve honesty, even when honesty hurts. Through the lens of jurisprudence, identity is defined not just through law, but through emotional reality and lived experience. In this script, we see relationships strained by mistrust, marriages shaken by secrets, and parenthood questioned by biology. Yet we also see moments of forgiveness, renewal, and emotional growth. The narrative recognizes that while DNA reveals the biological truth, healing requires emotional truth. The Truth Changes Everything podcast-style insights emerge naturally, acknowledging that truth is never just information. Truth transforms us. It forces us to confront who we are, who we love, and who we want to be. As the first portion of the script closes, the emotional landscape is clear. This is not just a courtroom. This is a place where souls are uncovered, where truth stands firm, and where the meaning of family is redefined. As the narrative continues, we explore the emotional weight that the DNA test carries not only for the people directly involved, but also for their families, their communities, and their identities. What appears simple on the surface, a scientific report confirming or denying biological connection, becomes deeply complex when placed within a human story. The DNA results can restore dignity or destroy trust. They can create new beginnings or end long-standing relationships. Every result affects multiple lives at once. Within Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, these results are not delivered casually. They are delivered with gravity, compassion, and clarity. Each person is given space to express their pain, their fear, their hope, and their expectations. The courtroom becomes a place of emotional accountability. One of the emerging themes is how individuals often arrive believing that proving biological parenthood will give them power or resolution. However, they soon discover that truth changes everything in unexpected ways. People regret taking DNA tests not because they wanted to avoid the truth, but because they underestimated the emotional cost of knowing it. There are times when reality is heavier than speculation. As the story progresses, we also examine how relationships break under pressure when honesty is missing. The emotional silence before the DNA envelope is opened is filled with years of unspoken resentment, guilt, and assumptions. Couples who once promised each other loyalty confront the ways in which life led them to act outside their vows. The courtroom becomes a space where love itself is questioned. The relationship between law and justice becomes especially clear here. The law can determine biological parenthood, financial responsibility, and custody arrangements. But the law cannot heal betrayal, rebuild trust, or restore love. Justice, in the emotional sense, must be earned through accountability. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes this truth repeatedly. Biology establishes responsibility, but character defines parenting. This narrative also draws parallels to stories shared in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where legal professionals reflect on the ethical responsibilities of representing human lives, not just arguing legal points. Similarly, the courtroom discussions echo reflections shared in the Divorce Course podcast, where individuals recount how love transformed into conflict and how healing becomes possible only when truth is acknowledged. These echoes highlight the interconnected nature of emotional truth, legal truth, and personal morality. Throughout the script, the concept of evidence plays a critical role, but evidence is not limited to documents or test results. Sometimes behavior is evidence. Sometimes silence is evidence. The legal notion of adverse inference in Evidence Act becomes important, especially when one party refuses to speak or avoids answering questions directly. In such cases, the court is permitted to infer meaning from the avoidance itself. Judge Lauren Lake demonstrates how truth reveals itself not only in what is said, but also in what is withheld. We also encounter the pain associated with cheating, a recurring thread that affects many of the relationships present. These DNA test cheating stories are not sensationalized here. They are explored through the lens of emotional cause and consequence. Cheating is shown as a symptom of deeper unresolved challenges, loneliness, insecurity, abandonment wounds, or emotional neglect. Yet while these reasons may explain the actions, they cannot erase the emotional damage caused. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. Some individuals in the script are not seeking the truth for emotional clarity, but instead out of fear of losing control, fear of being abandoned, fear of being seen as inadequate. Others seek the truth to finally let go of a relationship that has become defined by pain. The motivations are different, but the emotional intensity is shared. In some narratives, the DNA test confirms biological fatherhood, and the parent expresses relief, joy, and connection. The emotional connection becomes rooted in certainty. Yet the test does not automatically fix the emotional distance that developed during moments of doubt and conflict. The parent must now rebuild the relationship through presence, care, and emotional honesty. Truth reveals the starting point, but healing requires action. In other narratives, the DNA test disproves fatherhood. The emotional outcome becomes more heartbreaking. The person who believed they were a parent must now confront a profound sense of loss, not just of the child, but of the identity they built around that child. These narratives echo discussions found in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where people describe how pain becomes the space through which emotional transformation begins. The script shows how individuals respond differently to shattered identity. Some choose healing. Some collapse into denial. Some cling to relationships even when they are broken. Some find strength through acceptance. The question of child support also emerges with intensity. When the biological father is confirmed, legal responsibility follows. This aligns with Supreme Court child support standards that emphasize the child's right to financial and emotional stability. Child support is framed not as a punishment, but as a recognition of obligation. Even parents who are emotionally absent must provide for their children. The narrative highlights how support is part of parenting, not separate from it. Yet the script recognizes that financial support alone does not fulfill emotional needs. A child requires identity, love, and presence. In this story, children symbolize both innocence and the emotional consequences of adult actions. They did not choose their circumstances, yet they live within the outcomes. The narrative emphasizes that healing must prioritize the child's emotional well-being. The script also explores situations involving adoption, where love creates family independent of biology. These adoption stories' full episodes remind us that parenthood is defined primarily by emotional commitment and care. Some adoptive parents provide stability and love greater than what biological parents could offer. These narratives contrast powerfully with cases where biological parents deny or abandon their children. The story suggests that parenthood is an emotional calling, not just a biological connection. As the script continues, the emotional burden on the individuals becomes heavier. The truth is no longer an abstract idea. It becomes a lived reality that reshapes identities, relationships, and futures. The courtroom becomes a place of emotional climax, where people confront not only each other but themselves. Judge Lauren Lake reinforces a core truth. Understanding the biological reality is only the first step. The emotional work begins after the results are spoken. Every person in this narrative stands at a crossroads between the life they lived in assumption and the life they must now build in truth. Some find closure, some find clarity, some find heartbreak, but all are transformed. This portion of the script ends on a reflective tone, acknowledging that while the DNA test determines who shares blood, it does not determine who will stay, who will love, who will take responsibility, or who will choose healing. As the narrative moves into its final movement, the emotional landscape deepens. The truth has been revealed, yet the consequences of that truth are only beginning to unfold. In Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, the DNA results do not mark the end of the story. They mark the beginning of emotional accountability, growth, and personal reckoning. The individuals who have now heard the confirmed biological truth must confront what it means for their lives. For some, the results validate long-held suspicions. For others, they confirm fears that they tried to ignore. And for a few, the results offer relief and closure. But for all, truth changes everything, not just in the courtroom but in the heart. A central emotional realization emerges. Family is not just genetic. Family is chosen, practiced, nurtured, and upheld. Those who believe that biological confirmation alone would repair relationships soon discover that healing requires effort, communication, and consistency. The DNA test reveals who is connected, but not how to rebuild trust. Trust must be earned slowly, through new emotional patterns. This final section reflects on how individuals respond after the results. Some decide to forgive, not because they forget the pain, but because they choose to stop carrying it. Forgiveness, in this narrative, is not shown as weakness. Instead, it is shown as a powerful act of emotional maturity. People learn that forgiveness does not excuse betrayal. It releases the hold that betrayal has over their emotional lives. Others decide to walk away. They recognize that staying in a relationship built on deception would only repeat cycles of harm. These individuals accept the truth as a liberating force, allowing them to grow into healthier emotional futures. Their departure is not an act of abandonment. It is an act of self-preservation. Some individuals, however, remain caught between denial and truth. They struggle to accept the emotional implications of the DNA results. They cling to old narratives because the new reality threatens their identity. These emotional conflicts highlight how truth is not always welcomed, even when it is needed. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that healing cannot begin without honesty. The narrative also further explores the theme of parental responsibility. The concept of parenting goes beyond biology and beyond financial support. Parenting is shown as a daily commitment to emotional presence. Those who are confirmed as biological parents are expected to rise to this responsibility. The Supreme Court child support principles reflected throughout the script reinforce the idea that children deserve stability, and stability requires consistent, reliable support. But emotional support is equally important. A child needs to feel seen, heard, valued, and loved. Some individuals in the story rise to this emotional responsibility, learning how to parent with compassion and patience. Others struggle, needing guidance and emotional rehabilitation. The narrative underscores that effective parenting is learned, not inherited. The exploration of adoption stories continues here, offering powerful reminders that love is not limited by blood. Adoptive parents, guardians, and step-parents often demonstrate remarkable emotional strength. They step into roles that require resilience, patience, and deep compassion. Their presence challenges the belief that biological ties are the most important aspect of family. Instead, the narrative celebrates those who choose to love when they are not obligated to do so. Yet the script also recognizes the heartbreak of those who believed they were biological parents only to learn they are not. The emotional pain of losing the identity of parent is profound. These individuals must grieve, not a death, but the loss of a relationship they believed was real. They must navigate the painful difference between legal parenthood, biological parenthood, and emotional parenthood. The narrative encourages them to understand that love itself is not undone by DNA, but the roles and responsibilities may shift. The script engages deeply with the philosophical question of the concept of justice in jurisprudence. Justice, in this sense, does not mean making everyone happy. Justice means aligning legal responsibility with biological truth, while also encouraging emotional accountability. Judge Lauren Lake exemplifies the balance between legal clarity and human compassion. She does not ignore pain, she helps individuals navigate it. In this final section, the narrative reflects on the role of truth in healing. Many individuals fear the truth because they believe it will destroy them. But the script reveals that truth does not destroy, it reveals. It shows people the reality they must confront in order to grow. Avoiding truth leads to emotional stagnation. Accepting truth leads to transformation. The emotional journeys align with the reflective styles of Truth Changes Everything podcast, where individuals discuss how truth reshapes identity and personal direction. These reflections allow individuals to begin the slow work of rebuilding themselves, not as who they were in the relationship, but as who they are now, with new knowledge and new emotional insight. The story also echoes the tone of Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals describe how confronting painful truths led them to healing. Recovery is shown not as a single moment, but as a continuous process, a daily commitment to emotional honesty, personal responsibility, and self-compassion. The narrative comes to a powerful thematic conclusion. Truth may break hearts, but it also sets them free. Freedom in this context means the freedom to rebuild, to repair, to redefine oneself. It means acknowledging what has been broken and choosing how to move forward. The courtroom becomes a space where truth is spoken, but healing continues outside of it. In the end, the story does not promise perfect endings. Instead, it promises real endings, endings grounded in truth, dignity, and self-awareness. Some families are reunited with deeper understanding. Some families separate with clarity and respect. Some individuals walk into new lives shaped by emotional growth. Some must continue to learn and unlearn patterns that caused harm. Judge Lauren Lake's closing message resonates through the emotional aftermath. Truth is not something to fear. Truth is something to face. Truth is the foundation upon which healthy futures are built. And so, the story concludes where the emotional journey truly begins, with individuals standing in the light of truth, ready to rebuild their lives, with honesty, responsibility, and the courage to heal.